How do you do the famous Danco animation? Well, today we're going to crack the code and I'm going to show you the secrets to doing this Danco or black and white style animation. But before we get into the breakdown, let me show you what we're going to recreate. I found this cool animation that went viral on Instagram, and recreating it will help you learn the valuable secrets and skills behind this style. There's a little bit of character animation. Well, not really. I promise it's nothing too difficult, so don't get overwhelmed by that. But recreating this video is a great starting point to acquire the skills necessary to do this Danco style. Now, if you want to acquire the full ability to do the Danco style, Iman Ghazi style, Ali Abdaal style, or even my style that I use to get millions of views, then check out our leveraged editor program that we just launched. This will only be available for 5 days. And look, the only way to truly succeed as an editor is to differentiate yourself from the average editor. I still get hundreds of DMs a week of top-level influencers looking for top-level editors. The problem is the supply of advanced editors is extremely low, but the supply of an average editor is high. So to be able to work with top-level influencers, celebrities, and brands, you need to acquire the ability to do high-level animations and edits and understand social media. In the Leverage Editor program, we provide you the ability to become an advanced level editor and animator. At the same exact time, we take your newfound skills and show you how to attract high-paying influencers, celebrities, and social media-led brands. I know how to do all this because I built my company Leverage Media, and I'm able to service top clients, and I also train a team of 30+ editors. So I'm going to share with you all of these editing secrets that the teams of these top-level influencers like Iman Ghazi, Ali Abdaal are using. And right now is the creator economy boom. It's never been a better time to become an editor. So make sure you take action before this goes away, because the program will only be up for 5 days. We want to reward the action takers by making sure that everybody who goes through this program succeeds. This is why we're limiting the amount of days that it will be up. Also, we're probably not going to be releasing it for another 3 months. So click the link in the description to enroll now. With that, let's get into this tutorial. All right, we're here in After Effects and we're going to get right into it. Before we actually start creating the scene here, there's a couple things that you need to set up. First is to make sure that the composition is in this vertical frame. And the second is to make sure that the composition is around 15 seconds. So make sure it's 1080 by 1920 and it's 15 seconds, and then hit OK. Now, one of the key things for creating this Danco style is to actually create the entire scene first before you animate anything. Creating the entire scene will allow you to get the correct look, and it won't make it as confusing when you get into animating it, especially when you're connecting one animation to another. Now, the second thing is to use references, and that's what we're going to start with first. And what I mean by references is taking a picture from online of the thing that you want to create. In this case, it's going to be a scuba diver. So I have them here. You can find all these assets either on Google, or in the description, I have a link for you to download these for free, as well as this project file. So we're using this reference of a scuba diver to initially start the animation. And I'm going to go over to the effects tab here. We're going to look up flip, because I actually just want to flip this around. It's going to be a little bit upside down. So I'm going to hit R on my keyboard to bring up rotation. I'm just going to rotate them. Where do we want? 180 degrees. I'm also going to hit T on my keyboard to bring up the opacity. Going to turn it down just a little bit. And now we can start drawing. To do that, go to the pen tool in the top left, click on it. Make sure the stroke is white here. Hit OK. The pixel of the stroke is 3, and the fill here is nothing. To make it nothing, just click on the word fill, click on this right here and hit OK, and there will be no fill, because we just want to create some lines here real quick. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually create the leg. So I'm going to click once, click again here for the body, and just one line to the top there. From here, I'm going to make sure that nothing is selected again, and click for this leg right here, right about here, and just connect it there. With the arms, instead of going down here, I think I just want to create a little bit of just one arm coming out and another one right here. So kind of like a little V here. Actually, I want to angle them a little bit up, so I'm going to undo that, make this a little bit more coming out and up. There we go. Next thing to do is move on to the head. In the top left, go to the ellipse tool, make sure that's clicked, and click once and drag and hold shift. This is going to make a perfect circle when you hold shift, then let go. So we want to change the stroke to nothing, so I'm hitting the text here on stroke, going to this one so it's none and hitting OK. And we want to make the fill white. So I'm just going to drag that to the white, position it how we want to, maybe scale it a little bit while holding shift. Now I kind of want to make this stuff right here to represent the scuba mask. To do that, hit the pen tool, and we're just going to outline this right here. So you can see I'm using this reference to really build my scuba diver, because if I was trying to do this by myself, it wouldn't come out right, because I'd be pulling something out of my brain when I could just use a reference to help draw the image I really want to create in the correct style. So now that I have the head, I'm actually going to just drag both of these things here. I'm going to drag this over a little bit. I think it's a little too far. I'm going to extend the body here. So I'm just going to go back to my pen tool and click once and twice, make sure the stroke is there, and it looks pretty good. Now let's do the little scuba tank here. Once again on my pen tool, I'm just going to outline this. Now that it's outlined, I could change the stroke to none and change the fill to white. Deselect that, and then we're going to make this little rectangle here as well. Now that we have both of these created, I'm going to hit V on my keyboard to just bring up my regular cursor. Make sure they're both highlighted, and I'm going to drag it down a tad bit. Add a little bit of rotation to match the body here. Looks pretty good. A couple more things to add. One is the tube going to the head. So back to the pen tool, make sure nothing's selected. I'm going to click here once and then make a little curved line. We want to get rid of the fill, so just hit none on that and change the stroke to 3. Last thing to do is create the flippers. So make sure the pen tool is selected again and you don't have anything selected within the timeline. It's going to create a new shape. Here we go. Click once, click over here, kind of make a little bend here. So I'm just clicking and dragging, another little bend there and bringing it back. And then to adjust these positions here, I'm going to hold down Option on my keyboard on Mac. And you see that my cursor changes. This will allow me to adjust a little bit of the angle and curve of a couple of frames here. So I'm going to click on this one. It'll allow me to adjust a little bit. I want to get rid of the stroke on this one as well. So make this none and then make it white with the fill. From there, I'm just going to duplicate this by doing Command D. While that's selected, it's just going to copy it. I'm going to hit R on my keyboard to rotate it. As you see, when I rotate, it's not going to rotate from the middle of it since the anchor point is a little bit off. We could actually change that. There we go. We now have our Scuba Guy in this black and white style. I use that by taking a reference I found online. Once again, you can download this and the project file. But I took a reference I found online and converted it into this black and white style. We can delete the Scuba Guy in the background or the reference we used. Next thing to do is highlight everything, right click, pre-compose, and just call this Scuba. So we know it's the Scuba Guy. One thing I'm going to do to make things easier on us in the future is change this anchor point. To do that, I'm going to hit Y on my keyboard. That's going to bring up a new cursor that allows me to drag this anchor point to where I want. I'm going to put it in the middle of him. This is because we're going to want him to rotate from this anchor point once we get into animating him, which will be later in this tutorial. But for now, this is good. One thing I am going to do is just scale him down a little bit and then just put him in this corner right here. The next thing to do is move on to creating that fish that's on the bottom. So for that, I have a reference. What this fish is called is a angler fish. You can look it up on Google and find this exact image. Once again, if you just want it really quickly, I have it for free to download along with this project file. So the key here is getting this into the right position before we start to trace it. So in the effects and presets, I already have flip pulled up. I'm just going to drag that onto the picture, hit R on my keyboard to then rotate it. I want him facing this way. I'm just going to rotate him a little bit more till we get a good position. Scale him up a tad bit more. Hit T on the keyboard to turn down the opacity just a little bit. And now we can get into tracing this anglerfish. One thing that we're going to do is change the fill to none. We don't want to keep it at 3. This is a little bit more detailed. Typically when doing this style, anything that's going to be really detailed, the thinner your line should be. That's a big tip right there. So now we're going to get into just tracing him out. I'm going to fast forward some of these parts, but throughout this, I'm going to give you a little bit of tips when it comes to the pen tool and using that properly. But this is going to be sped up and you can see how I'm going to trace this anglerfish. So I always start off with the body here as it sets where everything else needs to go. All right, now that the body is outlined, I'm going to move on to outlining this fin right here. One thing to note here, since doing this fin, you can see that a line is obstructing it. What we want to do is just change the fill of this to black. And now when we unhighlight this, it looks like it's just a simple way to remove that line that's kind of obstructing it as we're creating this fin. All right, now that we have this fin traced out, we're gonna move on to this one. For this one, I'm just gonna keep the fill at none, and I'm gonna focus on tracing these spikes first. One tip with the pen tool is you could see that I wanna go from this curved line to making this spike right here. But if I click, there's that loop in the curve. To get rid of that, all you have to do on a Mac is hold down Option. On PC, hold down Control, and you'll see the cursor change to this little, if you bring it to this dot here, it'll change to this little caret, or I don't know how you explain it, but it changes here. And all you have to do from there is just click and drag this while holding down Option on a Mac. Just point it in the direction where you want the next line to go. So I'm going to point it following the direction of this spike, and now that when I click, there's no more loop, it's gone. Same thing here. So I'm going to hold down Option on my keyboard, click on this dot here and drag it over here because that's where I want the line to go, and it makes it pointy at the end. So that's a little tip right there. All right, so the fin in the back is done. The next thing to move to is the eyeball. We're gonna save the teeth for last. So with this eyeball, just a simple trace out, nothing too complicated here. Now that the eyeball is done, we wanna move on to the teeth. But the reason why I'm not tracing anything else is the key to this style is making things as simple as possible. This fish is pretty detailed. It's almost a little too detailed, but it works. But what you really want to do is dumb down the complexity of the image as much as you can. Awesome, so we're done tracing the fish. What we can do here is delete that background there, or the fish reference. And now it's time to make that circle in the middle and connect that to the fish as well. So to do that, I am gonna go up to the ellipse tool, click once and hold down Shift and drag out. This is gonna make a perfect circle. Probably wanna make it around this big right here. Change the stroke to none. Change the fill to white. We want this to be in the middle as well. So in your windows on the right here, you should see a line window. If you can't find that, just go up to Windows and you'll see a line. Just make sure that's checked. What we want to do is center this. So right here is center, but I actually want to move it a little bit up. So I'm holding Shift while moving up so it doesn't lose its path here. What we also want to do with this fish is highlight all those lines that we made. I'm going to bring it up just a tad bit so it's a little closer. Then we can connect this dot to the fish here. To do that, go to the pen tool, click once here. Just kind of make a little bit of a bendy kind of line here. Make sure the fill is none and the stroke is at 2. The last thing to do is change the stroke color to red for this. To do that, all I'm going to do is highlight all of these shapes that I have, including make sure that the ball is not changing to red. So we want to keep the ball there. Just click on one, click on one layer and then scroll all the way down, hold down Shift and click on the last one. And that will highlight all the lines that we have. Change to red. All we have to do is go up to stroke here. I'm going to change it to this pinkish red color here, something like that. You could copy this color code if you're following along. and then hit OK. Awesome. This is looking pretty good. One thing I'm also going to do is highlight all of the shape layers again and make sure the ball is not selected in that. So let me highlight all these shape layers, right click, pre-compose, and just call this fish. What we need to do is add a little bit of a faded section to the half of his body. That'll make more sense once we do this. So what we're gonna do is make sure the fish is highlighted. Go to our ellipse tool, go to rectangle. It's really important that the fish layer is selected. Then we're gonna click and drag right around like half of his body and just make a rectangle here. Hit F on the keyboard to bring up the mask feather. I'm gonna feather that out and also change this to subtract. Up the feather a little bit more. Something like that. Looks pretty good. I'm actually gonna change this mask. I'm gonna bring it down a little bit. Turn up that feather just a tad bit more. Something like that. Just like that, looks pretty good. All right, so this is our basic scene that is set up. Now that we have the scene created, we can get into animation. Like I said before, creating the scene allows you to figure out where everything's gonna be, and especially if you have an animation connecting to another animation or another scene, storyboarding it out in a sense really helps. So we built the scene, now let's get into animation. So the first thing I'm gonna focus on is this dot, because that's what's animating first. So I unhighlighted the fish layer and the scuba layer just so we can focus on this dot. What we want to do is have this little pulsating effect to it. To do that, go up to your shape tool, click on the ellipse tool, click and drag just so it's a little bit bigger than the circle. We're going to adjust it later. Also make sure nothing's selected when you do that. So I'm going to re-click and drag. It's going to make a new shape for us. We want the stroke to be 3 and the color of the stroke to be white. I'm going to make sure this is in the middle. We can just hit our align tool and hit the middle part here so it's perfectly keeping this circle in the center. From there we want to build out that pulsating effect. To do that, so on our circle shape here, we can just rename this to pulse, and we'll call this light, the circle, and this filled in circle here. But on the pulse one, we want to drop down the transform options here. Before getting into keyframing, we also want to change the anchor point because we're going to have it scale and pulsate. But with the anchor points right here, it's scaling from that anchor point. It's not going to look good. So change that back to 100. And we want to change this anchor point. So I have this free plugin called Motion Tools. It allows you to change the anchor point right to the middle of the shape. If you don't have it, all you have to do is just hit Y, click and drag the anchor point and place it in the middle. So now that's in the middle, what we can do is create a keyframe for scale. Drag that out to the right, and make sure our playhead's in the beginning, and make the scale 0 in the beginning. So now it's scaling up. We want to add some smoothness to this, so I'm going to highlight both of them, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. What we can do is actually keep the scale right about here. So I'm going to make a keyframe and delete this first one so it's scaling from this size and appears right away. Just drag that keyframe back to the beginning. Make this a little bit quicker by just dragging that right keyframe to the left. Maybe a little bit more quicker. Okay, so now that it's pulsing up, we need it to fade away. Okay, so now that it's pulsing up, we need it to fade away. We want it to start fading away right before it reaches the end of the animation. So drag the playhead a little bit back to right about here. Make a keyframe for opacity, and then drag the playhead to the right to line up with this keyframe here. Change the opacity to 0. And now if we play this back, it's still a little too slow for my liking, so I'm just going to highlight all these keyframes at the end here. Drag that to the left a tad bit. There we go. That looks pretty good. So we want it to keep on pulsating. All we have to do is hit Command D to duplicate this layer, drag it to the right. I'm going to hit Command D a couple of times, just making a couple of them. If you don't have the Motion Tools plugin, that's totally fine. It's free. I definitely recommend it. It's going to make this part really fast. But what you have to do if you don't have it is just stagger this by every 30 frames. But since I have this plugin here that's absolutely free, all I have to do is highlight all of these layers here. Make sure my amount is at 30 and the step is at 1, and then click this little icon here and it's going to stagger it by 30 frames. So now if we play it back, it's pulsating. I'm actually going to duplicate this a couple more times. So I highlighted all of that, duplicated it. I'm just going to drag all of them up to the top, re-highlight everything, and then just hit this again. It'll stagger it by 30 frames. Great. Now that we have that, we can highlight all those layers, right click, pre-compose, and just call this pulse. All right, the pulse is there. We're going to move to animating the scuba diver. I'm going to bring him to the top here, just so he's easy to grab and move. I'm going to put him off frame in the beginning. Make sure my playhead is also at the beginning as well. Drop down the transform tools here. Create a keyframe for position and rotation. From there, I'm going to drag my playhead all the way to the right just a little bit by like 3 seconds. Bring him over here where he's kind of at the top. Actually, I want him going up a little bit here. Drag my playhead to the right again to right about 6 seconds and bring him towards the circle here. So if we play that back, we can see the timing of it. Timing is pretty good. Now we're going to add that rotation and it's going to give it the kind of in the water floating effect. So as it goes about here, I'm just going to add some rotation throughout. Just little rotations here at random points also makes it feel organic. Now, as soon as he gets to the pulse, we want the pulse to go away. So I'm going to line up that keyframe here and do Command-Shift-D. It's going to make a split in the pulse layer. We want to make sure the pulse layer is selected and it's aligned with the keyframe right when he gets to the circle. I'm going to hit Command-Shift-D. It's going to split that pulse layer, and I'm just going to delete the end of it so it stops. That's when the fish is going to be revealed. But before we do that, we want to keep on creating that floating effect for the scuba diver. So all I'm going to do is just drag my playhead to the right, change its position a little bit, just ever so slightly. And then we're going to go back and change the rotation of it as well. So I'm going to go back. So you don't want to add too many keyframes and you don't want to move the position by too much. Otherwise, it's going to be like really quick movements and it doesn't feel like that the scuba diver is in actual water. So having real just small movements, small adjustments over a long period of time helps create that floating effect. And now we're going to add some rotation into it to get that desired effect as well. All right, so we have all the movement of the scuba diver laid out here. The final thing to do with the keyframes is just highlight everything, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. This is just gonna make things a little bit more smoother when it's rotating and going into its next positions. It's easing it in. So I'm noticing a little bit of harsh movements. We want to try to figure out how to get rid of those just by adjusting the keyframes a little bit. There we go. Looks pretty good. Now it's time to animate the fish coming in. Now it's time to animate that fish coming in. So as soon as the scuba diver reaches that pulse and it goes away, that's when we want the fish to come in. So I'm going to re-highlight it, drag it to the right so it's aligned with my playhead. From here, we want it to fade in a special way though, because we want it to start off where the connection is to then fading in the rest of the fish. What we want to do is make sure our fish layer is selected. Go to the ellipse tool, make sure it's on the circle one, or the shape builder tool, and make sure it's on the circle. Click and drag and make a really big circle so the entire fish is there. We're going to move this mask, and the way to get to this mask feature is just hitting M on your keyboard. Move that second mask on top of the first one. We can see when I hit V on my keyboard to adjust the position of this mask, it now goes away. So we're going to have it animate from here to making the fish appear. So start off the mask right at the top where it's out of the frame of the fish. Create a keyframe for mask path in the beginning. Drag our playhead to the right a little bit and then make it so that the circle has the fish in it. What we want to do now is also change the feathering of it. So hit F on the keyboard on this mask here. I'm just going to bring it up quite a bit. So now that when it comes in, it has a little bit of a fading effect to it. Hit U on the keyboard to bring up all those keyframes that we made, just the two right here. Right click and ease this in. I actually want the fish appearing a little bit earlier. So like as this guy's reaching him, that's when I want the fish to fade in. So I'm just going to drag and adjust that layer and it should come in pretty good now. Yeah. There we go. Looks great. Now we want to add the text. And then after that, we're going to get into the final touches of it. So for the text, go up to the text tool in the top left here. Click on that. Click on in the middle of the frame. And then we want to label this as materialism. So type in materialism here. I'm going to change the fill to white. Also want to scale this down quite a bit. We can position this right under the circle here. Also, we want to leave it there in the beginning. So we can see the pulse is just kind of overlapping it a little bit. I'm going to drag it down. Looks good. So we want to have text next to the fish and we want to label it as depression. Do this super quickly. All I'm going to do is hit Command D on the material text. It's going to duplicate that layer and bring it to the left here. I actually want to scale this up a tad bit. And then type in depression. We want this text color to match the same color red that we have here. So I'm going to take my eyedropper tool and click on the red here. Hit OK. Looks good. We want this to also come in at the same time when the fish comes in. So I'm going to make a cut. So I'm going to drag this to the right, to right where my playhead's at. A simple fade in is just all we need for this. So hit T on the keyboard to bring up opacity. Hit the keyframe once, drag this off to the right, and then make this 0. Drag this to the left to make it come in a little faster. Awesome. So now it's time to get into the final touches. There's two things that we need to do. One is adding the wiggle effect to everything. And then two is adding the glow. So first, let's start off with the wiggle. To do that, we're going to click on the fish layer here. In the effects and presets tab, we are going to look up turbulent displace. Drag that onto our fish layer. Change the amount to 20. the size to 20 as well. Bring our playhead to the beginning of the layer. Create a keyframe for evolution. Drag my playhead to the right. Change the evolution to roughly about 16. And by the way, I'm holding shift while dragging to the right to make this scale up a little bit faster. So like 17 or 16 should be good. I'm gonna hit U on my keyboard to bring up all those keyframes. Drag that evolution keyframe all the way to the right. And we should have that wiggle effect. Okay, so I actually think it's a little too fast. What I'm gonna do is change that evolution to right around like 13 or something, and then drag that all the way to the right. Now that we have the turbulent displace effect made, we can copy this. So all you have to do is click on the turbulent displace text here, make sure it's highlighted, hit Command C on your keyboard or Control C on PC. Go over to our depression text. Make sure our playhead is at the beginning. Hit Command V to paste that turbulent displace effect on it, and you can see it's wiggling. I'm actually going to change the amount and size to 15 just to reduce that wiggle effect a little bit more on the text. It's a little too much. For the materialism, we also want this to start to wiggle once the fish comes in. So I'm going to bring my playhead to right when that fish comes in. Or right when the depression text appears too as well. So with the materialism layer, I'm going to hit Command Shift D to make a cut right where my playhead's at. On the second part of the cut, I'm going to place that turbulent displace effect on it. So since we already have it copied, all I have to do is hit Command V. It's going to paste that on there. Change this to 10. And this one to 10 as well, just because it's a little bit smaller and that wave ripple affects smaller things a lot more. So we want to reduce it a little bit. Except we want the wiggle to be a little bit different for him. To do that, hit the Scuba Guy layer, bring on that turbulent displace effect, change the amount to 4, the size to 20, bring your playhead to the beginning, create a keyframe for evolution, bring your playhead to the right a little bit, and then just bring the evolution to roughly around probably 18 here. Hit U on the keyboard to bring up all those keyframes you just made. We can see the one that we made for evolution and drag that to the right. This is what Iman Ghazi and like Ali Abdal use all the time to have that jittery effect on top of things. You might not be able to tell as I play back, but it's there. The next thing is adding the glow to it. Now I use a preset called Deep Glow. I highly recommend getting it. It's $50 if you have the money for it. It's definitely a better glow than the regular glow effect that After Effects gives you. But if you don't want to spend money on it, totally fine. I'm not sponsored by them, but I do highly recommend buying Deep Glow. The link will be in the description for that, as well with the project file. But if you don't have it, just use the regular glow. It should be fine. It should be good enough. So in the effects and presets, I'm going to look up Deep Glow. I'm going to throw this onto the fish here. As you can see, it's glowing pretty good. What I want to do is just change it a little bit. Bring down the exposure. And the radius is fine where it's at. We can take this Deep Glow and hit Command C to copy it. Bring that over to anything else that we are working with. So I'm going to do the light. Make sure that's on Deep Glow. Looks good. Make the pulse a Deep Glow as well, but we're going to change the pulse exposure down a little bit and as well as the radius. we want to do the same thing for the scuba diver. So I'm just going to Command V to paste that glow on there. Maybe just adjust the exposure and radius a little bit. Nothing too crazy here. Apply this to our materialism text. We want to apply the glow right when it switches over, right when that fish comes. So I'm just going to apply it to there. So Command V it, bring down the exposure quite a bit and the radius. It's a little too much for the text. Something like that is pretty good. Final thing to do it with is the depression text. So hit Command V. As you see, when we place it on the depression text, it makes it look a little pink. One way to get rid of that is just reducing the exposure and the radius a little bit, but also going into the tint and enabling the color. And we can change this back to that color that we liked. A little more red here. And there we have it. We just finished the Danco style animation or black and white style animation, whatever you want to call it. Now, if you want to be able to do this a lot quicker and set up better workflows and systems, I just released a course that shows you how to do the Danco style, Iman Ghazi style, Ali Abdaal style, and the same style that I do for my account. That has allowed me to get millions of views and also over 150,000 followers across all social media platforms and over 150,000 followers. The course covers how to do all of that, and it takes your newfound skills and shows you how to acquire clients so that you can make 6 figures a year through editing and animation. I myself have personally made $30,000 a month working for clients and doing this type of style of animation, and I show you exactly how to do that as well. The course is going to unlock all those secrets for you, but it's only up for 5 days just because we want to limit the amount of people who come in the course so we can focus on making sure that they are successful once they go through it. So it's only available for 5 days. The link is in the description. You do not want to miss out on the opportunity to become an advanced level animator and editor, as you want to differentiate yourselves from all those other editors out there. Becoming an advanced level animator and editor is the best way to earn more money. And we show you exactly how to do that. So once again, link is in the description. It's only up for 5 days. Hop on it. We won't be releasing it for another 3 months. And once we do, the price will double. So click the link in the description to get that. With that, I'll see you in the next tutorial.